Welcome back to the Boardwalk Podcast. Today we are on part two of our interview with Chris Rogers. Chris Rogers is a former Green Beret who's done a lot of cool and badass stuff in his life. So we have him on for two full episodes, two-part interview, probably our first one. So I hope you guys enjoy, and we'll just kick it off. No intro music or anything. Just welcome to part two.
So how long was that first trip there? Because the SF guys got into a rhythm, right? 6 on, 6 off. Was that how the first one was, or was that later
No,
on?
no, yeah, no. So the first deployments, because they were trying to flesh out what's our actual strategy, what's our actual end state, what's our actual, commander's intent, all that crazy stuff that you expect to have when you first go in, but sometimes you just don't. They weren't sure how things were going to roll, so they were actually making the deployments kind of small, it's kind of short. Like the fifth group guys got there in like late October. They left right after Operation Anaconda, so like mid March they were gone, and we got there in January and we left by June. But when I say we, I mean our battalion. We were transferring over to other SF units who were coming in behind us, continuing the mission. But yeah, it was real awkward because it's like, oh man, you just got your feet under you, you're off running, everybody's doing great, you got all these relationships established, everybody knows, everyone loves each other, trusts each other. And hey, sorry, dude, I'm going home, but hey, here's my counterpart. I'd like you to meet him. He's this really nice guy, and yeah, guess what? He doesn't speak Pashto either, and unfortunately, he don't speak German either. So sorry, you guys are gonna have to figure this one out. You know what I mean? Like, it was kind of awkward. It was kind of weird. But yeah, normally the deployments were between about 4 to 5 months at first. And that was until probably like mid 2003. And then they realized, okay, we're going to be in this for a lot longer than we thought. We know we're going to have to sustain this better for a long term engagement. So then they started making the deployments every 6 months. But then when I went, so I had a gap there because I went to Afghanistan in 2002. I went to Iraq in 2003. And then early 2004, I actually went to our schoolhouse. We call it SWIC, Special Warfare Center, to be a SEER instructor. So from March of 2004 to August of 2006, I was in SWIC. In September 2006, I go back to Afghanistan. When I get there, now all of a sudden the deployments are 8 months long. And they progressively got longer from there. When I left in 2011, they were actually doing about 10 or 11-month long trips. And a lot of those dudes were doing 11 straight months with no break. Like, some of the conventional forces I know were doing 12 months, but they'd give them a whole 2 weeks back home or something like that, like a mid-month or a mid-tour break. Not for the SF dudes, man. You go over there 11 straight months and you're getting it on, dude. You're doing what you do. And yeah, they kind of figured out later that kind of hurt things in a way too, just because of the fallout with the families and all the domestic stuff and stuff like that.
How do you balance that? Because it seems like it is better to have long deployments because you want that continuity, right? They know you, they trust you, and you've worked with them for a long, long time now. And it's like, but
Right.
at the same time, you're destroying the morale of those people that, really, like, you do your job, you like your job, but, you know,
Right.
yeah, you kind of want to go home too at some
Yeah,
point.
right. I mean,
Yeah.
you married her for a reason, right? I mean, you'd kind of like to know her, right? Yeah, and your kids, you kind of like to, and it is hard. And I don't know. I don't know if there is a right answer. I'm not gonna lie to you. Even just in my own personal experiences, I don't know if there's a right answer because I will freely admit there were times in my life, especially from '06 to '11, where I would come home and I literally felt like a transient. Like I'm just passing through. I'm just here, to show my face and do my due diligence. But 3 months from now, I'm getting on that bird and I'm going to go do what I got to go do. And you kind of get in that rhythm as a family, but at the same time, uh, yeah, the family's not real cool with that. The family, they're trying to do the right thing by you and support you, But in the end, they're the ones who are feeling that strain the most. They're the ones who are feeling that resentment the most. I mean, because I love my wife to death, dude. Trust me, I love her with every essence of my being. But I know there was times she was probably thinking, that son of a bitch, he's over there having fun. He's running around with his boys, and they're acting like they're cowboys, and I'm over here doing, and I try to tell her, like, honey, I promise you, it's really not that fun. It's fun, but it's not that fun. You know what I mean? Like, I miss you. I miss the kids. I want to be home too. But at the end of the day, it is truth. We loved doing that mission. We loved that job. It was very exhilarating, very rewarding to go over there and do what we did. And so I don't know if there is a good balance. I tried. I don't know if got it right. I don't know if any of my friends and I got it right, but we tried. But I think one of the things the unit finally figured out was we have to give people a release valve when they come back. And so they started doing this thing where the chaplains were provided funding to put together marriage retreats just for husbands and wives to go hang out for a couple of days or a weekend somewhere and reconnect with each other. And those were paramount. Those were highly, highly important and successful. Like, we went to one of those one time, and it literally saved my marriage. There was a chaplain at the time. His name was Charles Gordon. We all loved him because he was just a good old country boy from Kentucky. He loved to hunt and fish, and he'd talk to you like a regular guy. He didn't always try to preach at you. He just tried to be a regular guy with you. But he did one, and they had a video series that they showed at it. And it's this minister in Wisconsin who's actually a psychologist, a marriage psychologist who does, counseling. And it was funny because what he would talk about is women's brains are like a big ball of yarn where everything's like connected and it's all touching and da 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 da. Whereas men's brains are like a series of boxes. And the most important box inside a man's brain is the nothing box. Because when you look in it, there's nothing there. That's our safe space. That's where we go to just deprogram and ignore things and relax and let things go and calm down. The minute he told my wife that, it was like an epiphany from God. Like, it totally saved my marriage. She's like, all these times I've been talking to you, you're sitting there on the couch. I thought you were listening to me and you were ignoring me. And I thought you were just being a jerk. And now I realize you were in your nothing box. And I'm like, thank you, Jesus. You know what I mean? Like, it literally saved my marriage. But all that stress from the deployments and all that stress of being separate from each other and not always connecting with each other, those retreats tried to fix that. And that retreat for us was like monumental. So it was cool to see the leaders at that time of the unit take interest in that and do what they can because they were seeing a problem and they wanted to fix it and trying to help guys find that balance. But at the end of the day, I don't have a good answer. I know I said a lot of words, but I don't really have a good answer because for each family, it's really what works for them. You know what I mean? It literally is what works for them, and keep doing the best you can. Just keep working. Just keep trying. You know what I mean?
I know that the deployment cycle for like my first unit, I went to the 18th Airborne Corps G2, and I got there 2 or 3 weeks before they redeployed from Baghdad, right? And it's night and day, right? They show up and there's the block leave, and it's right around Christmas too, so perfect setup for them.
Yeah.
And when they come back from block leave, right, it's just us being intel, we don't have a platoon leader. We've got a warrant officer, right? And chief just wants to decompress for a couple months. And so for a couple months,
Right.
we just kind of we were bare minimum stuff that General Austin, who was the Corps commander at the time, that he wanted. And it was very laid back. And I know I've read a couple books. I just wrapped up Lions of Kandahar from Rusty Bradley, right? And he's talking about, for the people at home, the deployment cycle for the SF guys is nothing like the conventional guys, right? It's not like you go
No.
home and you've got 6 months, because you're going to spend half of that 6 months at minimum. If I'm not mistaken, like you're doing recertification on certain things, like being a medic, right? I'm sure you have annual certifications you have to do, and so it's not
Right.
like you can just come home and take 2 months off to just spend with the wife and kids. You've got to,
No.
you get a week or two, then you're back at it.
Yeah.
Red cycle taskings. Yeah.
And there you go. Yeah, exactly. Then you get back, and if you do even have an extended period of time, like Stu was saying, there's a support cycle we call the red cycle. Then they would hit you up for that. Like, hey, we need guys to go out to Camp McCall and be guest instructors for small unit tactics for a month. Like, dude, man, I just spent 8 months in the desert. I'd like to see my family. Well, yeah, but we're shorthanded. Yeah, those things did happen at that time frame, and it was frustrating because I can even remember as a team sergeant trying to manage all that. It's like, wow, so we're going for 8, we're back for 4, but in that 4, I'm supposed to do 2 block leaves of 2 weeks apiece, so that's 30 days. So now I really only have 3 months, and in that 3-month time frame, I'm supposed to take everybody to the range and go do all these other tasks. And, oh, yeah, by the way, you want us to do a jump, and all these little distractors, all these little ankle biters that would just chip away at the time home with the family. And it can get very stressful, very frustrating. I was just lucky. My wife was a soldier, so my wife could kind of see the big picture. My wife could understand that, hey, look, you're not really completely in control of your own destiny, and you're a soldier. You got your orders. You got to do what you got to do. She wouldn't be happy about it, but she would understand it. But you know, a lot of the young guys, their wives had no frame of reference, had never been in the military, didn't come from a military family. They don't understand it. They get very frustrated with it. They get very jaded by it, very resentful about it. And those are the marriages that really suffer the most. I mean, they're really the ones that are the most danger. So I would try to find every way I could to protect those guys. If I had single dudes, I'm not gonna lie, and if any of my single dudes were listening to this, they'd probably completely chime in and agree. But if I had single dudes, I'd tell them like, "Hey, look, man, I need you to help your buddy out. His family needs him for this. Can you eat this one? Can you give up that time that that his family needs from him?" And I would put it to them like that. And most of them are really good dudes. They're good team guys. They want to support their teammates. They're like, yeah, screw it. I got it. No problem, Sergeant. Too easy, They knew what it meant. They understood how important it was. So they would support. But I don't know if all leaders think like that. I don't know if all leaders try to talent manage like that. I can't speak for them. I don't really know. But I know that's what we did on our team because we treated our team like it was a family. I mean, literally, this isn't just I go to work here. No, this is my life. This is my culture. This is my family. And it's not the family I was born with, it's the family I've chosen. So I'm going to give you even that much more dedication and loyalty myself because I choose to be part of you. And I just want you to do the same for me. And most of the guys would really respond to that. Most of the guys, they understood that, and it's what they were looking for too. So they would do the same. We had a really tight team. We had a really good team. I was very proud of them. I could waste your night telling you just how much they matter to me because of the quality of young men that they were.
I think that's something. Well, I know that is something that is it's not necessarily unique, right? Like we've talked about, like even my very mundane deployment to Baghdad. When I came back, the relationship I had with my cohorts, my peers, was so much stronger, right? And I can only imagine that in that environment, that rapid, fast moving environment where you are so heavily reliant on each other's proficiency and ability, and you're around each other so often that it's only going to be so much, so much more intense, right? That relationship, that brotherhood, and that camaraderie. I think it goes without saying that that's kind of how it goes. And like with our time in CAF, when we were there with some guys from first group, right? And we've talked a little bit with them, and a lot of what you're saying is what they were echoing, right? Because we picked their brain just about, especially me, who hadn't had any previous working experience with the SF community,
Right.
and there's a lot of similarities, right? Where it's very important that you support each other, and that you take your training seriously, because the stakes aren't the same as if I've got a soldier who doesn't know how to do intelligence preparation for the battlefield step 2, right? It's not the same at
Right.
all.
Right. Yeah.
So and like, so on that, like, kind of heading back into that first deployment, right? So it's your ODA. You're training roughly 750 Afghans who speak Pashto and maybe a couple European languages, apparently, because that makes sense for Afghanistan. Um, and so, but this was up by Gardez. Was there a, and we kind of talked about this. So, like, we're not. It's not that we're opposed to the war, but we do like we point out where we think we made a turn, and that turn, it turned into 20 years, right? And the
Yeah,
Taliban
it
still in
did.
charge.
Yeah, it did.
So you're up there, you're outside of Gardez, you're training a bunch of essentially an Afghan militia. Was there a defined enemy on that first tour, or was it whoever your the CIA, or whoever your Afghan, like the local warlords, whoever was talking to you? Like, is that who you were targeting? Whoever they said?
We would do our level best to corroborate what information we were getting, because you know how they are, especially because they're tribal, and especially because they're old Mooj. There's probably old rivalries there that we're not really read onto. So we would do our level best to try to corroborate the information. But at the end of the day, we put a lot of faith and trust into those local warlords to feed us the information for our targeting. I'll say that. Some of it was generated by the CIA, and some of it was generated by our own guys. But at the end of the day, yeah, you don't always have the luxury or the time to get that second source corroboration. So you kind of rolled with it. You know what I mean? But at the same time, that's part of the fluidity of the battlefield, anyways. You ever seen that movie True Lies with Arnold Schwarzenegger? And there's the part where the wife is like, "Oh my God, you killed people," and he's like, "Well, yeah, honey, but they were all bad." You know, that's kind of the perspective we took about it. It's like, yeah, maybe this isn't the best information, but I'm sure at the end of the day, if this guy's talking bad on him, he's probably still a bad guy. He might not just be a high level bad guy, but he's probably still just a bad guy. You know what I mean? I mean, I know it sounds like a weak justification, but at the end of the day, things were rolling so fast, and there were a whole lot of unknowns, that you just did the best you could with the information you had at hand. You made a combat decision. You made a tactical decision. And for the most part, I think we did pretty well, because by the year 2005, there was no Taliban in Afghanistan. If they weren't dead, they had all run to Pakistan. They already knew, we're not wanted here. We're out of here. You really could not find Taliban in 2005.
Well,
But
that's
what
where we made
happened
the
in
mistake of nation
I say,
building.
but what happened in 2005? Now all of a sudden we want to roll in Big Mother Green and start trying to nation build like it's a European nation, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. That's the big
Yeah.
problem too that we talk about a lot, and I guess that was toward the end of your time there. But I'm sure you had a lot of experience when that started happening, because it's like I tell people, and like we've told people on the podcast, it's like we won that war. I mean, quickly we went in there. You guys, especially at the forefront of it, and a bunch of untrained Afghan militia kicked the Taliban out of the country. So I mean,
Yep.
was that the objective, or was it to kill Bin Laden, or And it's like when you start saying like, well, we completed those objectives. Well, it's like, but we failed to build a nation, and I think that's what we really hammer on the podcast. But can you talk a little bit about that? Like when you started seeing uh, there's that specter, like you said, of the big green, of the State Department and all these other organizations coming in to do just fuck it up
Oh
in a
yeah.
way,
Oh
like
yeah.
what did you see? When did that start happening? And
So
could you
so I had
predict
the
it? Go ahead.
no, I did not predict it, to be quite honest with you. So that first administration of Bush Jr., he had all the right people in place. He had all the heavy hitters, right? He had Rumsfeld as his Sec Def. He had Colin Powell as his Sec State. He had these smart guys that already knew we don't need to get drug into this long, drawn out attrition type engagement. Let's just go in with the heavy hand, smash everybody, point our finger at them and tell them, don't do this again or we'll come back again. And then, just just pick everything up and move out. I think they were right about how we probably should have progressed in that place. But something happened, that transition to his second administration after re-election. They wanted to all of a sudden realign where they're going with things and how they're trying to develop things and who they're getting involved. And, it really kind of, looking back on it with hindsight, it really feels like it was kind of like a nepotistic thing. Like like that administration was trying to hook up a bunch of people with the military industrial complex and the amount of money and the contracts and so forth and so on. And it made all of us a little confused. We're like, where the hell are we going with this now, dude? Because I left and came back in 2006, and the war I came back to in 2006 was nothing like the war that I left in 2003. You know what I mean? It's like, what the hell are we doing, man? Like, what's the goal here? What's the focus? And then that's when and I don't want to sound like an elitist dude, and I don't want to sound like I'm some genius, because I am not. I'm a tactical dude, man. I'm a tactical dude, and I try to keep it simple, stupid, and I try to rely on doctrine and rely on principles. But you get a lot of these big army people with their big army ideas, and they all try to sound smart, and they're all currying for favor and status and position, and they throw out all these little terms to sound brilliant. And they're over there briefing people. Oh yeah, we're no longer in UW. We're in coin. We're in coin. Level 2 or whatever. It's like, dude, do you even know what you're saying? Like I disagree with you. Like, I can take you to any village in 10 different provinces in this country right now, and I promise you would still be in UW. There's no governmental presence. There's no governmental support. The people don't recognize the central government at all. And we need support mechanisms here to win their hearts and minds to get them to do that. They still ain't buying what you're selling, and you're trying to bedazzle everybody with your BS that you're in this level of coin, but you're not. You're really in UW, and you're not seeing it.
Are you insinuating that the Uzbeks of Jalzjan province don't recognize the Pashtun president of Afghanistan?
Gee, go figure. Wow. Yeah, exactly. Those kind of things. And we literally, at the tactical level, would sometimes stand around and go, do those guys ever hear the ground truth? Like, who's scrubbing the sit reps, and who's telling the old man what he wants to hear and what he instead of what he needs to know?
Hey, Chris, that's a great point. So let us spin you a web real quick, okay? So when I went to Afghanistan, I went as a contractor. It's a pretty open secret on this podcast. I went after I finished my Army contract.
Right.
And I actually got fired from my position in Kandahar, in large part for refusing to whitewash the district assessments in Kandahar province. The 82nd was in town. I think it was 1st Brigade, which would really piss my dad off.
Right.
I'm pretty sure it was 1st Brigade. And I've said this on the podcast before. We were dealing with Shoreback and Registan, right? And at this time, Shoreback the district center was moved to Registan, and the water system had been bombed by the Taliban, right? So there's no government. There's no government. There's utilities or infrastructure are at a minimum, and the Taliban have complete freedom of movement. This is all open source out in the world for anybody to see. To me, that is at best contested, but realistically, that's Taliban control, right? And so I put that in there, and I got kicked back from the 82nd Brigade commander, who was the deputy commanding general for TAC South at the time. He said, "We need to change this and make it green, or make it yellow." Like, it's not yellow. It's not contested, sir. It's something I would have never done as Sergeant Pop, right? Go up against a full bird like that. But Zach Pop can say whatever the fuck he wants. And so,
that contractor beard gives you power, man.
Exactly. I'm like, hey, sir, I know I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt, but that's not the fucking facts on the ground, right? The facts on the ground. And so he kept kicking it back, and I kept providing it with more and more corroborated intelligence reports and open source reports to support my position. And ultimately, he had final, say. They changed it to yellow. And so when you talk about who's lying to who, well, Chris, like the three of us were at that TAC South, previously RC South level. We were telling the truth.
Right.
From beyond us, who the fuck knows? But a lot of people got promoted.
Yeah. Right. 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 Man. Correct. Right. It's just sunnier. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nothing to see here, sir. Everything's great.
Yeah, and that's kind of that transition that we've talked about, and if anyone's watched the Panjaway podcast interview with Rusty Bradley, which is really good, I'd recommend
I
it to
bet that is.
anybody.
Yeah, he's a good dude. I like Rusty a lot. Yeah.
Yeah,
Rusty's
awesome
smart
stuff.
dude. Yeah.
But something that we've kind of gone over is sort of the switch from SF going in essentially to defeat the Taliban, and conventional battle space owners coming in. And I'm not saying it was everyone throughout the organization. There were a lot of people trying to win the war, but at the top level, they were trying not to lose the war and to hit their next promotion points and move on the ladder. And we just saw that continuously throughout the end stages of the war, and it led us to where we are now.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's to me, what I couldn't understand was I felt like, and I don't know if y'all will be able to get this reference or not, but at one point in our military, the big military deployment during the Clinton administration was Bosnia and Kosovo. Peace enforcement. We did all these great things. We went over there and we flexed our muscles and shot a few people, and we used our airplanes to bomb some stuff. But then after that, everybody was cool and we were all friends and we rebuilt everything and everybody loves us. I felt like they were trying to make Afghanistan that. Like that's all they knew as a junior leader. So now they're a senior leader. They're trying to revert back to what they know, and what they know is, it's Bosnia. So let's treat this like Bosnia. It's like, hey man, so this isn't Europe, okay? This is Asia, and they're a Muslim culture, and even worse, they're a Muslim culture that's very tribal. And if you don't understand all the subtleties of the different tribes in this country and what version of Islam they follow and what they believe in, you can't just broad paintbrush over, oh, you're all great Muslims and Allah loves you. No, it doesn't work that way, man. You're not getting it. And it's not, well, we're just here to keep everybody at peace so no one kills each other and they can all live in harmony. No, dude, they don't think like that. They got blood debts. They got blood feuds. They're not going to live in harmony unless we do something to change the way they think altogether. You know what I mean?
I love how my time in the Army, I was always told, like by my company commanders or my first sergeants, that, let's try to solve things at the troop level. Let's work bottom up, right? But every fucking directive and every goal and every, commander, CIR, IIR, PIR is fucking top down. Right. And I think that's the one of the more obvious issues with Afghanistan was that we would cycle out a new, ISAF commander every 18 months or whatever. And we've talked about it. It seemed like there was a trend where the first third of their time there, we were like disseminating what the new strategy was. Right. And then the next third, we were losing ground because we were trying to implement the new strategy. And then the last third, we started gaining some of that ground back once we got some buy-in. Right. So yeah, like for an organization that preaches bottom up leadership, there's a lot of top down directives. Yep. And that kind of leads to, so you talked about, you had like a 4-year gap between your trips to Afghanistan. And you said, you did say that, 06 was a lot different. Like how, beyond obviously we had built up some infrastructure, what else was different about that second tour in 2006?
Well, they had established a government. Karzai had been officially voted in and established his government. They were trying to, at least in the highly populated areas, they were trying to do more of engagement with the locals and get more governmental support and just kind of trying to educate those people on a strong central government. But at the same time, you could tell that in their culture, they don't have a lot of trust for a strong central government. You know what I mean? Like strong central government to them means, oh, you're just another type of an oppressor. You know what I mean? Or a user. You're just going to rape the country for your own needs or whatever. And so, especially out in where we were out in those very rural areas, out in those, literally out in the by God, those people, they could care less who the central government is. They were more focused on who's my district governor, what's the district governor doing for us, what's the district center, what's it doing to support us, what kind of nonprofits are being brought in to help us, that kind of thing. Kind of like where the provisional reconstruction teams and all that stuff got involved and all that. But at the same time, they don't really care about who's in charge of the central government. It's just not in their nature to think, oh, thank God everything's good to go in Kabul. You know what I mean? They don't care. What's things like right here in Uruzgan? That's what I care about. What are things like right here in Bamyan? That's what I care about. And trying to translate to them, hey, look, if everything's good in Kabul, it'll make things better here. They really balk at it. They resist it. They don't believe it. And I was never fully successful. I'm not gonna lie to you. As many times as we spent talking to them and trying to educate them and trying to make them understand kind of the Western mind and the Western view on democracy and a representative republic and all that stuff, trying to get them to get that, dude, it just never stuck. They just didn't quite get it. And it's kind of like they kind of laugh like, oh, well, that's a real nice thought. That's a really cool little dream. But the reality is I live right here and I'm relying on my district governor. And if he's a piece of crap and he don't take care of me, then what? I'm back to taking care of myself. You know what I mean?
You got a guy in Badakhshan who can't point out Uruzgan on a map, and you're trying to explain to him,
No.
nation level government.
Right. Yeah. He probably doesn't even know how many provinces are in Afghanistan.
It's 34 for the audience.
Right. But we even have kids here in America, they get confused when they learn in our civics, how many states we are in the state capitals and how they're all important into, a whole but yet independent. This is one of the best educated countries in the world. They are not. They all have basically like a third grade level of education. So you're trying to explain these concepts to them, and those concepts are alien to them, and then they're just like, yeah, okay, whatever. You're just a guy from the West, so you're not the mullah. So I'll be polite, but I don't believe a word you're saying because you're not the mullah.
You look at like Abdul Razak, who was the chief of police in Kandahar, right? He was probably the most powerful man in Afghanistan, and he was illiterate until he was like 35, right? So.
Right. Exactly.
Try getting some subsistence farmer, on the side of a mountain to understand like geopolitical theories. It's like he doesn't care about that. It's not important to him.
It's like here in East Tennessee. I can drive an hour outside Knoxville and find people that do not give a shit about the central government because they're strung out on hydrocodone. You know what I mean? They don't care. Their life is miserable. They live in complete abject poverty, and they don't have any concept of the American central government. And while those people don't matter to the administration because there's so few of them compared to the normal, educated populace that exists in the population centers, in Afghanistan, that's everybody.
That's
so
correct.
They make up a lot bigger portion of the population. So
they are the majority. That's right.
So when you talk about like the PRTs, right? So that reminds me of VSOs. Is that anything that you took part in? We've referenced it, but we haven't really talked on it, and it'd be cool if we could.
I know what I never experienced it on an ODA or as a team sergeant. I never actually did that mission, but I had plenty of friends that have done the mission. And I fully understand the concept of it because, if you go back to Vietnam, there was a program there called the CIDG. Okay, and that was the what was it? It was the Commoners Internal Defense Guards or something like that. I can't remember all the words right now, but it was a program called CIDG. It's basically what they grew VSO out of. It was the whole thought of letting the locals maintain their own security for their own area by standing up militias or standing up police forces that are supposed to be eventually supported through the central government, through the actual governmental channels. So you would recruit locals in the local area of the village or the town that you're in. You'd put them through training. You give them basically a little bit of authority and a little bit of responsibility as a peace enforcement officer for that area, and then you're supposed to use them to influence the local population by keeping things nice, safe, and secure, keeping the Taliban from being there to influence or intimidate. And they called the ink blot technique, where we do this village here, and then over here we do this village over here, and then we do another village here, and then it starts spreading out, and it just inundates the area because you've got all these key points that can branch out. Again, the reality is you're training people that don't trust or believe in the central government to now want to be supposedly part of the central government. They didn't quite fully buy into it, I don't think, from what I've heard, from what I understand. Like, the guys would work really hard working with the local population. They work really hard training the guys who are going to be the little police force there in the village. But at the end of the day, after they graduate and get their gun and go to work, there's not a whole lot of support after that. There's not a, they're not getting paid on a regular basis. They're not getting training on a regular basis to maintain their skills. They're not getting resupplied for things they need. So then that old, screw the central government. I know it's just a bunch of BS starts creeping back in, and guys eventually just say, screw it, and walk away from the program. And then it only takes 2 or 3 dudes to say, screw this, I'm leaving to go. And everyone else starts going, yeah, maybe I should go too. You know what I mean? Like, we felt safe and secure when there was 10 of us, but now there's 4 of us. I don't feel so safe and secure myself. So screw it. I'll just go blend back in. You know what I mean?
I think what really affected it was the drawing down of SF forces in the country. Like, so by the time you were
Right.
retired and I was coming in, I think we had like 3 or 4 SOTFs my first deployment, but my second deployment we had like two or 3. In my third deployment we just had one battalion of SF for the entire country.
Wow.
In 20
That's crazy.
Yeah, in 2015, it was pretty nuts. And so when we were instituting VSO and the ALP, Afghan Local Police Forces, they were effective when they had ODA oversight to some degree. At least they were
Right.
getting paid and like somewhat supplied. But as we pulled ODAs out, I mean, Afghanistan being, the most corrupt country in the world for most of the time, I think they moved up 2 slots as we were heading out there, but they're probably back at the bottom again. The funding just wouldn't get there. You'd have ALP guys walking around with AKs that had 1 magazine and maybe it was loaded. So it was just
Holy crap.
just destined to fail as we continued drawing down forces, and that really affected the program. But you make really, really good points with, well, I was viewing it as an analyst that was covering guys in Kapisa, which is right next to Kabul. I'm sure in places further away from the center of government in Afghanistan that they had a lot more issues with getting the Afghans to buy into it. Especially since they're generally distrustful of central government anyway, with their history with the Russians.
Yeah, man.
There weren't enough of you guys, Chris. That's basically what it boiled down to. And And that's really not your job. I mean, your job's not to build a nation state. I mean, job's to kill bad
I
people,
mean,
man, for the most part. Train up militias, right? Not to
well,
build a
I
country.
mean,
Like,
we do have, I guess you'd call it the charter. We do have the charter of using our enablers, our support people to help start establishing formalized government once we've helped capitulate a government. Does that make sense? But reality is, it's not our primary role. We're just keeping the population in support of formalizing the new formal government until the real heavy hitters with state and big army come rolling in to put all their weight in behind that. Does that make sense?
So,
But
based
yeah,
on the Washington Post FOIA request regarding the Kabul evacuation, State Department never got that memo, Chris.
well, uh, you got to look at who's running state and who's making the what do you call it, their strategy or their plan. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Do the person who's running the state actually understand what their role is in state? You know what I mean? People have different viewpoints on what the State Department's role is. You know what I mean? But if we're going to help capitulate a government to help form a more friendly or better government, I mean, you kind of want the people whose job it is to know how to help run a government to be there to help form a government, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because I mean, you can get the Chris Rogers version of how to run a government, but I mean, I don't remember all those old Rogers rules of Parliament and all that stuff. You know what I mean? It's not my lane, bro. You
yeah,
know what I
kind
mean?
of out of your lane, right? Yeah,
Right?
Yeah. I mean,
So
I think a big issue is that a lot of like the State Department job fell on these like lieutenants and captains that were trying to interact with the local populace. And a lot of those guys are real smart and go-getters, but that's not their damn job. Like, especially conventional army, your job's to kill the enemy, and they're
that's
not
it.
properly equipped to try to conduct like geopolitical nation building on that scale, and it's not fair to
Yeah,
ask them to.
yeah, yeah. The rules of a KLE don't apply if you're building a government. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? It's like no, this is not a KLE. This is something different, man. We need to get the experts in here.
Is it safe to say that from your first trip or your first tour to Afghanistan to your second, not necessarily that the mission had changed, right? But the mission had expanded, where it wasn't necessarily just eliminating a counterinsurgency, but it was also getting embedded with local villages and trying to talk to those mullahs or tribal elders or village elders or whoever, and trying to I guess turn the tide to use a stupid fucking cliche, but I'll use it anyways. Um, and at the same time, it feels like Stu and Kyle were saying, like that's state's job is to kind of encourage people at the national level, even though it was never going to be successful in Afghanistan, right? But you had tour one, identifying who to eliminate from the battle space. Tour two, embedding with local villagers and trying to be that counterinsurgency force. Is that pretty accurate?
I would say so. Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
And then so that leads to a question that was asked, and we'll address it on another episode in more detail, right? But when you look at coin doctrine, it's 10-1, right? It's 10 U.S. personnel, or at least 10 friendly personnel for one insurgent, and Taliban numbers range anywhere from 30 to 70,000. So let's be conservative and just split the middle, 50,000. You would need at least 500,000 pairs of boots on the ground, and we were never over 98,000,
Nope.
right? And I think in the almost year that we've been doing this podcast, I think that's what we've been trying to drive home, right? Is that not that the war wasn't noble and that it didn't have merit. The three of us believe it absolutely did have merit, especially as the immediate response to 9/11. And then 2004 rolls around, and we don't prop up Karzai. He wins pretty handily, but then we turn into full on nation building, and everything gets lost in the sauce. And now it's 2022. The Taliban is in charge again. It's like it's super frustrating. And I can only imagine, like, for somebody like you who was, literally in there with the villagers trying to do this stuff, I can only imagine how frustrating it is seeing years of work, and not just work because it's work, but work because you believe in the purpose, right, and the mission and the desired end state, just get absolutely wasted.
Yeah, it's kind of a weird, tough thing for me. I've asked the question a lot, but I don't have a good response for it. I'm not even gonna lie to you. I just don't have good words because I'm very conflicted in my emotions about it. Um, First and foremost, my biggest probably angst about all of it is what our human cost for our military was over there. Because it's very hard, because I do a lot of interaction with Gold Star families. I'm very close with the two or three Gold Star families. You, you feel horrible talking to them when they see what they saw on the news and they see how things went down, and they just go, "So was my loved one's death just totally worthless? Just not even worth it all?" And what do you say to that? You know what I mean? You're like, "Oh, you know." I don't have good words for that. I don't, because part of me feels they're justified in saying that. You know what I mean? Like, if I was one of them, I might feel that same way. That human toll, you know, yeah, it's tough. I don't have good words. But then there's the other part of me that also feels bad for the Afghan people who trusted us. There were a lot of Afghan people that bought into what we were doing. They bought into what we were selling. They believed in us. They believed in what we were trying to accomplish. They've put their lives and their families at risk to help us try to accomplish that. And they didn't get to get on a plane and leave. They're still back there holding the bag right now, man. That's tough. That to me is sad. I can't even imagine how they felt.
That's certainly something that we have wrestled, like amongst ourselves. And we talked to, just so you're aware, we talked to an Afghan born interpreter last week, and she shares a lot of the same sentiments, right? Like, it's super frustrating that so much effort was put in, and at the end of the day the ball was dropped, right? And you know looking at it, I think the way that we have kind of, I don't want to say that we've rationalized it, but the way we view it is at the individual soldier level, like, we all did the job we were supposed to do. I do believe that the failings are up on, Central Command, SecDef, SecState, POTUS, and I think that's pretty obvious when the Washington Post does they do the FOIA request for the Kabul evacuation. Lester Holt sits down with President Biden, and in full disclosure, we've shat on every president involved in this war, so we're not playing sides on any of them. But
Yeah.
President Biden says, when Lester Holt points out that you have military personnel on the ground saying this was disorganized, State Department had no no understanding of the severity of the situation, and that's something that the three of us have had confirmation from a friend of ours who works in the Pentagon. Like, no, this is true. That this isn't some fucking specialist making shit up. This is what happened.
Right.
And for Joe Biden to come out and say, "Well, I reject the findings," I mean, there's not much of a bigger slap in the face after 20 years. And like you said, right? Like, we could talk about the cost of the war, but you can't put a cost on a life. And for the
Nope.
president to come out and say, "Well, I reject the findings," it's that's the most angering thing about all of this. Like, we watched the Kabul evacuation, we did an episode or two on it, and we were pretty angry. And I think after hearing this big massive investigation that finds that there's just a civil military disconnect, and for the leader of the free world, the commander in chief, to say, "Well, I reject those findings," I can't be much more angry than I was when I first saw that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I don't watch news anymore, especially mainstream media. I don't. I don't. It. It just. It's not something I do. I wasn't even aware he had made a statement like that, but I can tell you my initial reaction hearing that he made a statement like that. It that to me sounds very flippant and arrogant, which I think is a problem in. And this is just the world according to Chris Rogers. I think that's becoming more and more of a common problem with members in our Congress and members in our senior administrations. Like, it's like they're developing this kind of upper level elitist mentality, like where they're they're above they're above the law, they're above scrutiny, they're above responsibility and accountability. Like, hey, I'm in charge, so get over it. I see it a lot whenever I do bother to watch the mainstream media and I see their reactions and press conferences and stuff, and it shocks me. It literally shocks me that, because what that's telling me personally is I think they do not understand nor employ the uh, the mentality of selfless service. Selfless service is a huge thing. It's a huge important thing for our members in the military because you are serving something bigger than yourself. You're serving not just a concept, you're not serving just an idea or a theory. You're serving a a movement. You're serving a way to try to make the world better and safer. And you're putting yourself at risk above your own natural, you know, survivalist tendencies to do it. Selfless service is a huge thing, and it's something that should be honored and should be respected. And it's something that people should actually attain to try to do instead of what a lot I see right now from our senior leaders doesn't seem to be that. And it shocks me. It saddens me because, like you said, everything starts from the top down, man. Everything starts from the top down. The personality you display, the behaviors you display, the characteristics that you display, the people below you are seeing that and they're using that as their example. Even you can be a poor leader and you're still going to lead by example. You're just leading poorly. You know what I mean? It but the good subordinate leaders, the good soldiers, they see a bad leader and they say, "Well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to make that mistake. I've gotten a good example of what not to do." But there's a lot of people that won't do that. They'll buckle to whatever pressure or wanting to go along to get along or not be the stick in the mud with everything, and they'll just perpetuate what they see being displayed from their uh, superior leader, and that's not good.
And it goes back to what you said about like Zach's dad at the very start of this whole interview, about, oh, here's a guy I served under and he was a great leader, right? And and maybe that's it. Maybe these people in these high positions, instead of, what does that oath say? I will not use my position for personal gain or anything like that.
Right,
And that's
right,
exactly what they do. It's literally
right.
the exact opposite of that creed or that idea. Is I'm not going to use my position for personal gain, because they all do. They all want that next star. They all want that next promotion so they can go sit on the board of Raytheon. We've talked about this many times, and they can go make
Right.
money and profit off of this. But that's not the point, is it? Like, that's not what a good leader does. So I guess that's the way it is at the top, and maybe that's why it all fell apart at the end. Just poor leadership skills, basics,
Yeah,
basic
or,
stuff.
or poor leadership focus. You know what I mean? I mean, I don't know. I don't know if there's a good label to put on it, but it just, and this is something I struggled with even towards the end of my military career when I was considered, a senior NCO and basically a senior leader. When I came in the military in 1987, because of the Cold War and because of the Vietnam vets and because of the focus of everyone, that was just the norm. It was a given. It was expected. You love your country, you love your battle buddies, you love your family, you love your God, you love your way of life. You put all that in front of you. You are the last concern. You and what you want and what you want to do and all those things are your last concern. But, and I hate to say it, I hate to sound like a crotchety old grumpy old guy, but ever since they changed that Army slogan to Army of One, and they made it more about the individual than they did the organization, that started a slow glide path down where people in the military in general wanted to be more self-centric and less selfless. And then those young people get older and become senior people.
Our Army of One is definitely probably the worst campaign ad the U.S. Army has ever rolled out. I will agree with you, Chris. Right, when we talk about things like selfless service, I had a conversation with my wife the other day. Like right now we're recording this on the 9th of March, and like if you haven't watched the news, you still heard about what's going on in Russia and Ukraine, right? And my wife, I live here in Idaho. Canada is right there. And she's like, if that happened, I would leave. We would pack up the kids and the dogs and go. I'm like, no, you would pack up the kids and the dogs and go. Right. I firmly believe that this nation and the idea and the people, even though I disagree with probably most of the people, is worth fighting for. Um, and so to be failed by senior leadership, and especially in your position where that direct action, and where it's a whole lot different. Like if Sergeant Pop or Specialist Pop when I was in Baghdad gets felled, it doesn't change anything, right? I'm nobody dies because of it, right? But if Sergeant First Class Rogers gets felled in the middle of Paktika, that's a problem. And I don't think the people in charge ever understood that.
You got to wonder sometimes, man. You really do. I mean, I don't know, man. I could waste your whole night on theories on military leadership and where we've kind of gone off the rails on things, but I think it just boils down to literally, if that leader, it doesn't matter which leader, but if that leader is not willing to say that my interests need to be last, they're doing everyone around them a disservice. That's the bottom line. And I will call any Muldoon out on it. I don't give a shit if they got a fucking star with fucking wreaths around it or if they got 4 fucking stars. I don't care. I don't care because at the end of the day, it all comes down to the tactical level. Everything that those people higher up do, say, and incorporate or order comes down to the end user at the tactical level to have to implement. And if you can't lead by that example and be that selfless person, how in the hell do you expect that end user down at the tactical level who's got to put his life on the line be willing to be selfless about it? You expect them to die for you like cannon fodder just because you're fucking in charge? Wrong answer, dude. Wrong answer. Why do you think generals from World War II like Patton and MacArthur and Omar Bradley were always so well respected? Because they lived on the front lines with their troops. They went into battle with their troops. They led from the front. They put themselves in that harm's way so that their own subordinates could understand, I'm no more important than you. We are all in this together, so we all got to cover each other's ass. But I ain't seen a whole lot of people come out of the IJC there in Kabul and come out to the front line with me. I've seen ones or twos, but I ain't seen a whole lot of them. You know what I mean? Whole lot of running a war by a fucking email by ISR, armchair quarterbacking motherfuckers, . So It's frustrating for sure. And it makes me wonder where are we going to be when we finally do engage in the next big engagement. I mean, I know there's still stuff going on in Syria, but I don't know much about it. I don't know how intense it really is. I don't know how involved it really is. But when we get into a real engagement again, how are they going to act? How are they going to do business? It's concerning to me, to be honest with you.
Hope we never have to find out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You
right.
know,
I think
No doubt.
I think there was probably a mix of bad leadership at the end of Vietnam, and it took a little while for the younger guys that had seen the issues to make their way up and get us prepared for GWAT, where we had a lot of good leaders, at least at the beginning. So hopefully something like that happens, because as much as we hope there won't be, there's always another conflict.
There is always hope too. You're right, and that's a good point because if you read books on like Colin Powell and Norman Schwarzkopf for Desert Storm, that's exactly what they talk about. Being those junior leaders in Vietnam with some really sorry senior leaders and going, man, I'm not going to make those mistakes if I ever get in charge. You know what I mean? That's a very good point. Hopefully, there are some of those guys out there. I would like to believe they are.
well, Chris, it's been 2 hours. Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. And
Yeah, man.
it's been a great talk, dude. This is easily one of the best interviews we've had. So, as always, we give the guests final words. So if there's anything you want to say or anything you want to add, feel free. You got the floor.
Other than I just appreciate you guys inviting me on. I appreciate your time. I hope I didn't talk everyone's ear to death and bore the hell out of them. But and I say this to everyone. I mean this from the bottom of my heart, from one warrior to 3 others. I thank you for your service. It does mean a lot. What you did and what you chose to do, you made that conscious choice to do it. And there's respect in that and there's pride in that. And I thank each and every one of you for your service. And it was guys like you that were willing to do that made my job easier for me and made me love spending 24 years in it. I have a very close personal friend of mine. He likes to always say, and I completely agree with him, I don't miss the circus, but I always miss the clowns. And that's probably the best way I could ever put spending 24 years with all you guys doing what we did. I think of my service with all you guys every single day, and it's the people that matter to me the most. The people I got to work with and I got to interact with, and the people that helped me become as good a man as I was. They matter most to me, and you guys as well. I thank you for your service, and I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate what you're doing with your podcast. It's important to get information out to people that don't understand these things, and that's pretty paramount. I like it. I appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Chris.